Noah Fleischman, Reverend Paul Slatkus, having the opportunity to speak with my new friend, Noah. Hi, how are you?
Well, good day, Paul. So good speaking to you.
I'm looking forward to this. We've been talking. It's believe we're doing a show over there at WOR radio. Ann Caroso, who's like the smartest woman when it comes to protecting your money, your assets, legal matters, and very excited to be there. And I love their new facility. But we're going to talk today. Noah works there. He's like a producer type guy. He's in that control room, pushing a button here, a button there.
And
And
having my buttons pushed very often,
yeah, yeah. Well,
which is no surprise. I
and
know,
that's
Paul, you're a veteran of the industry yourself.
I've had a few buttons pushed during those periods of time, or I probably pushed them unintentionally. Of course, we don't mean
Those
to
are the best ones.
we don't mean to push it. Like one time I was at a television city, and I believe I told the stagehands it was a Sonny and Cher show. We go way back, and our conversation is going to be well in the family we're going to talk about, but maybe the golden age of CBS or just television overall in general. But
Well, the history of Television City was so rich. I mean, it was so full of all
was
kinds of
I, I'll
experiences.
tell you how rich it was. It was actually created on an oil field. They called it the tar pit, the tar what's it, tar pits? Um, yeah, it's all oil over there, and
You're not going to say the La Brea Tar Pits, are you?
yeah, I am going to say, oh, the man knows his stuff. That's where
Good
the
heavens.
television sit, Fairfax and Beverly.
My word.
I know it's hard to think of a farmers market, and that whole area over there is a tar mine, is a oil mine.
And what better place to conduct show business?
It's a perfect thing, because show business is. I could see the oil gushing out and people under it, and they'd still be filming. They would think that's a good
Probably.
show.
You never stop the proceedings. When that program starts, when that performance starts, you keep the show on the stage.
Geez, you know your stuff. There's no doubt about it. There was another great show over there. We're going to get to All in the Family, but you're just reminding me of 7,000 years ago. This is 72. I was out there, 1972.
Wow.
This is they call this show, and it's still on the air. The Price is Right.
Oh, yes.
They did that there, and that was a big show in the studio there. In the studio, we had four studios, and
You're talking about the daytime Bob Barker version, which began around that time?
way back when, yes, and set galore, cars galore, props galore, and Mark Goodson and Bill Totson, they would go and get these contestants. This is real showbiz. They would line up for like about a half a mile, all dressed like they were going to a Halloween party. And as the nuttier,
And
the better.
contestants were chosen the same day as
Same
everyone
day.
lined up.
He would walk down this long location outside of the studio and select the people to come on the show based upon their whatever he based it upon. But obviously there were some wild things going on out there.
My goodness. So he had to make on the spot decisions as to who was going to become the contestants on that
Yeah,
show.
I guess it sort of probably is. I don't know how it runs these today shows, the talent shows that are on
Yeah,
now.
I don't know myself where they how they actually choose the contestants and that sort of thing. Obviously, there's a particular matter of certain legal and ethical concerns involved. You want to make sure you choose them correctly, that there's no unfair procedures in selecting or something like that. But to make decisions on the spot as everyone's lining up, you have to choose based on personality. I would think to a certain extent, you have to choose based on to a certain extent how these people play on the camera.
Though the interesting thing of what you're saying reminds me of something Ann Caroso said on the show, which is on 10:30 in the morning Sundays on WOR. And what she said, we have now become a litigious. I remember when she says this so often on the show, society, litigious, legal beagle. I don't think, I don't know. I'm sure there always will be some prejudice, there's some concern about getting sued, but somehow I don't remember 50 years ago the I'm sure there was equal rights and other kinds of things. But nowadays, you look at somebody strange, you might have a lawsuit on your hand. What do you think?
Probably now more than ever, I think.
Yeah,
I can actually, I guess this accounts for my ability to be able to count the rings within me, but I can remember a time when that may not have been quite the case so outwardly, so
yeah.
expressively.
But with this in mind, I think it's a good time to segue into All in the Family, because All in the Family, what 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 was well, what do you feel was powerful about All in the Family for you? Enough for us to have this conversation, even.
Well, what I can tell you, Paul, is that every time I look, now more than ever, when I go back and look at All in the Family, it's All in the Family for me is kind of like the Beatles. It's always been a part of my life. But when I go back and listen, when I go back and watch, when I go back and study, uh, it, definitively, when I make a point of actually watching, listening, I always see something new. I always see something powerful in the presentation, in the acting, in the direction. And I guess maybe as I've gotten older, maybe as I've seen more comedy and drama over the course of my life, I've been able to actually recognize what's so brilliant about those performances. As I think Norman Lear, among many, would be the first to say that it was theater. It was the closest thing to live theater, to going in and watching, let's say, an off Broadway play or something of that nature. And the folks who sat in the audience at Television City seeing those performances definitely had the theatrical experience of seeing this. But it was also shared with us at home. And it was probably, I think, some years ago, maybe 10 years ago, when I finally got around to acquiring the recent DVD release, the home video release of the All in the Family episodes. I'd grown up watching some of them on CBS as a child with my family, and then watching the Viacom reruns on in strip syndication for many years. So, so many of these things, again, like the Beatles songs, they just stayed in my head. The dialogue stayed in my head. But when I went back and watched the DVD, which was contained rather the uncut episodes, so to speak, the ones that folks watching the network television broadcasts 50 or more years ago were looking at, I noticed things in the definition of those images that I had not seen previously, or was not used to seeing in the reruns that had been so carved up for television and for replay, which was the detail in the sets, the detail in the design, the detail in the costumes. Just the detail alone was so definitive in the way it presented those characters and those images. I would love to know one day who it was. That, I mean, when you talk about All in the Family, obviously you talk about sociological comment and political comment and all these different things that made it in some ways an inflammatory show and an expressive program, and it was wonderful and important. But when you just watch the show, if you were to turn the sound down and just look at the set and watch the detail and how it captures the characters, how it creates and speaks for the characterizations of Archie Bunker, Edith Bunker, their friends, their lifestyle, their beliefs, the design of the set, the coloring, the images, the furniture, all of it spoke for it all. And I would love to know one day who it was that was actually in charge. They obviously had people in charge of design and developing and creating that design, but there was probably, I'm convinced, a great deal more concern and interest that went into the design of that set and the design of the props uh, per episode than anything you would see today in terms of a situation comedy. Not the situation comedies on TV today are necessarily bad. It's just that there's not nearly as much interest and focus on design, props, imaging as there was back in the day of the Norman Lear programs.
Well, I'll go a little backwards on this because and in discussion with you in this regard, because my job there was the assistant manager of the studios. So our responsibility were the sets, was the set scenery, was the props, meaning that I was in charge of the stagehands. So the stagehands are the ones who had to like lay that all out. We also were responsible for the lighting director. and worked with the set decorator and the art director. See, those are the jobs that do that design work on that show. Now, the writers, just the beginning of the thought of, if I recollect, and I can't remember all the three gentlemen's names, but I believe they were from Brooklyn and Queens. They were real New Yorkers because Norman Lear was from Hartford, Connecticut. So in essence, he was and this East Coast kind of Queens, and I had a grandma in Queens, an aunt in Queens, and they had the
I grew up in
Roadhouse.
Queens.
And you're all right, you grew up in Queens, so to a certain degree, a good decorator, and I'm sure those guys probably did, or they looked and saw. We kind of if you didn't have plastic on your couch or on your on your lampshade, you might not have fit into the neighborhood.
And that set captured all of it. You would look at that set and you would see there's a home with people middle age or so that have been there for the last maybe 40 or 50 years. The just the wallpaper, the background of the set, the way it was lit, the credenza in the back of the set where you had the telephone and all that sort of thing. Those images were unforgettable. I was just looking at the old episode where Sammy Davis Jr. guest starred, and there was a cross shot of Archie and Sammy sitting in their chairs, and on the table you actually had the original china, the blue and white china sitting there with the Twinkie on the plate. And the camera captured all that. That wasn't an accident. That was all in the direction, and it was absolutely exquisite. It looked like a Norman Rockwell painting. It's absolutely stunning.
And it was, and I agree with you. And any practically almost any one of those shows could be on stage, and they could call it "The Kill of the Mockingbird." It was that each and every one were so well done. Let's talk a little bit about because I just watched one a couple of days ago on a MeTV channel that has a lot of these older, has Carol Burnett, has All in the Family, has Perry Mason, has Beverly Hillbillies, like Twilight Zone, has the shows of my upbringing. Now I'm much older than you, so I'm actually quite surprised you're. I feel I'm
I've been a student
75.
of that. I've been a student of that genre for a long time.
Oh, okay. So this one, that's an episode, and I mean, I'm thinking I'm going to say one thing before that though, because I once had a lunch with Jimmy Rosenfeld was his name, and Jim Rosenfeld was one of the, I don't think he was the president, but he's definitely one of the presidents of sales for CBS. And I remember Jimmy Roosevelt saying to me, his son, I believe, is on TV as a host for sports and things, saying to me, to a certain degree, he helped make that show appear on CBS. He put his neck out as a salesman, stating that I'm going to find a sponsor for that show. And
Oh,
the
definitely.
and the fact of the matter is, because see, network television was not that bold. It was, to take a chance on a show where they're going to make fun of Polish, Irish, black, yellow, red, white, orange, purple, and turquoise. And so he told me, the first season, maybe even the first season, didn't have any sponsors. CBS ate it, because if they don't sell the ad, they have 12 minutes. If they don't sell the airtime, then they lose the air at that time. And so it was tough getting it on because it was a controversial show, right?
Well, the story I read, Paul, and there's more than one story
Oh,
out there.
okay, good.
There are many written accounts that kind of converge. They don't all match up word for word, but one of the closest accounts I read was that ABC television came very close to picking up on Norman Lear's concept in 1968. They had went ahead and they financed maybe two or three pilots, and Norman Lear had acquired Carroll O'Connor and Gene Stapleton and a couple of other young actors to put the pilot together. And they had done this, and they tested them with audiences. And I guess back in those days, I'm not sure how ABC did it. They probably herded a bunch of people into a room and showed them the video, and they said, "What do you think?" And they asked them questions, and none of those procedures are usually entirely accurate in terms of audience testing, but they did what they could. And then they came very, very, very close to signing the show for the upcoming fall schedule. And then Norman Lear got a phone call the night before the announcement, and they said to him, "Listen, we're really sorry. The show is just a little too controversial. We just can't do it. We'd love to, but we can't." And that's when the show got shelved for about 4 years, or
Really?
maybe
No.
3 years, until I think the story was that it was Aaron Rubin in the office of, uh, if I have this right, someone at CBS. It was Mike Dan, perhaps one of those fellows, and they just got into a conversation. They were speaking about some other show, and then all of a sudden,
Fred
the topic of all,
Silverman? Fred Silverman?
it could have been Fred Silverman, as a matter of fact. And the topic of all of those were the days came up, which was the working title of the show. He said, "Whatever happened with that?" And Rubin said, "Well, not too much." He said, "I would love to see it one day." He says, "I happen to have a tape of that pilot in the trunk of my car." He says, "Why don't you bring it into the video room downstairs? They'll put it on closed circuit. We'll all watch it." And that's what they did. And every executive tuned into that broadcast when they played it on the closed circuit, loved it. And next thing you know, the show was getting signed. I don't know how close to urban legend that is, but apparently more or less that's what happened.
Oh,
And the show ended up making it to air. But even still, the story I'd heard, much to what you were saying previously, was that it didn't actually explode on television. It made a
oh,
controversial burst, but after that, it just kind of died down, sort of like fireworks. And it didn't really have too many viewers in the beginning. People weren't turning on to it like crazy. It didn't exactly blow the lid off the whole CBS middle American image that they were trying to do. And it took a while.
Another scenario that I went to. First of all, we do know it is All in the Family is an adaptation of To Death Do Us Part, I believe was the name of the. I don't know if you're aware of that, but of
Oh,
the
yeah.
of a British success
Mm.
show that Norman Lear, uh, however he got, or however he decided to use. Maybe I don't know, but it did come from England. Is
I'll tell you one
that right?
story about that.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you know more, so you're good. Yeah, I'm
Well,
learning.
well, I'm familiar with that genesis of the show. One story I had heard, again, I don't know how urban legend this is, was that Irving Fine, who managed no less than Jack Benny around that time, was actually looking for a property to bring Jack Benny back into series television, and that Till Death Do Us Part was a property that he tried to acquire for Jack Benny, as if that were to work. Apparently, Jack didn't go for it, so it didn't happen. But apparently, Lear may not have been the very first to try to acquire that series property for American television. But that
Wow.
apparently was one of them. But since that didn't fly, then the one we're talking about did happen.
No, you know your stuff. I'm
Oh,
very
well,
well,
again,
Mike.
I can't ascribe these things to fact necessarily, because I read them in various memoirs and biographies, and these things you figure they're coming from honest folks who are speaking the truth, but sometimes you never quite know how closely things actually have happened.
Let's talk. Take a second or two more, and I'm really enjoying speaking to you. And of course,
Oh, same here.
we should have our own show on ORWOR
Paul, you speak my language.
and every single iHeartRadio station. I mean, we should be on their rock, on their country, on their classic, on the Beatles show. I mean, you and I,
New York's
we should take
Q104
over the
classic rock,
network.
certainly.
We should take over the network. I'm starting to feel it that the whole the whole big
I could
business.
see that. A 3-hour daily show.
I don't know if
You
we
know,
could. I don't know. It might not be enough, but look, we can discuss this.
perhaps.
I mean, we could take a lunch break and people can watch us eat too. That would be interesting.
I'll tell you, if George Norrie, the fellow who, God bless him, has been hosting Coast to Coast for so many years overnight, if he ever wanted a night off, he could acquire the two of us, and we could just do this conversation for about 4 hours.
My name is Paul Harvey Slatkus, and there was a guy, a famous radio guy named Paul Harvey. And it's Paul Harvey here in Chicago.
If you tell me you're related, I'm leaving.
Well, I would not even tell you I was related if I was related because I don't want you to leave. We got
Good heavens, no, of course not.
let's take a second, two more, and here because I just watched an episode with um, a very powerful episode with it was about two women who were I guess you could say lovers, and the sensitivity for the subject matter is just it was done. It was at the and one of the women lost Edith's first cousin,
Yeah,
and
the cousin Liz
Archie,
episode.
the cousin Art, and Edith came over with Archie, and to show their due respect for the funeral, and there was a tea set, and the tea set belonged
Mhm.
to felt that it was been in the family for 100 years, and somehow evolving out of that tea set conversation with the cousin of Edith and her let's call it girlfriend. Um, uh, she felt that she wanted the tea set. Archie wanted it. Archie thought it was worth $5.22, but then Edith said it was worth a couple $1,000. And then Archie said, "Whoa, yeah, we better get this tea set. We're going to go to California and sell it, or
That was the
whatever."
obvious setup.
It was a what a setup, so brilliantly set up. And then the sensitivity of a gay story, I guess, and how it went from realizing that they were gay, the couple, the one Edith's cousin and this other lady, and and Edith understanding it and seeing it, not being shocked in a way, but in the loving way that Edith was. Edith is the epitome of a wonderful woman in my
Yeah.
mind. A wife to like no other would put up one with the freaking Archie,
Oh yeah, of course. But you know
right?
something, my wife and I have been watching reruns of All in the Family. My wife is a number of years younger than myself, but like me, she grew up with All in the Family on the television and reruns, and so she was certainly familiar with the characters and has a love for them as well. And we were watching some of the episodes previously, and my wife made a very interesting point to me. She said that yes, Edith was a very, very patient soul, but when you think about Archie, it takes a certain, she said, it takes a certain kind of man to be married to Edith. Someone who can be kind of patient with the way Edith was, with her personality, sometimes with her ability not to catch on to certain things so quickly. And it takes a certain level of patience and acceptance to be married to Edith in certain ways. And Archie maintained that. And the episodes certainly portrayed that. The fact that, yes, in the end, there were things Archie absolutely would not do, would not stand for. But when Edith made it clear that it was important to her, you would see Archie would, and the direction and all just captured this, that he would get that expression that just said, okay, I can live with it. It's all right, you know. And that was something beautiful. It really put across, and had my wife not actually said this to me, it might not have occurred to me so fast that, yes, what the show put forth was that just as much as Edith maintained that patience for Archie, he also maintained that for Edith in many ways. Maybe not quite as visible, not quite as noticeable or recognizable, but they were all there. And that's what made those characterizations beautiful.
I love it. I love it. That's such a sensitive comment. I think, I'm going to say at this moment, because we try to keep these things not too long. But we could talk forever, I know. And those were the days, as they say, as they sing.
I'll just say, Paul, if
I,
we ever do this again, I want to talk about, we could just do 20 minutes talking about the actors and the performers who appeared on that show, some of the great stock performers of all time. Norman Lear knew them and used them all, and they were really wonderful. A lady named Kay Callan was the woman who played the cousin in the Cousin Liz episode, and she was magnificent also. And you really can't jump over All in the Family without acknowledging the performances of some of those great, great additional actors.
so I just watched the movie Babe, um, with one of the actors, and I interviewed him also. Um, and at this moment, my brain is not recollecting. Slim, I'm hoping you can get it.
Wasn't Slim Pickens, was it? Maybe it was.
It was not
I'm not
Slim
sure.
Pickens because Slim Pickens, I think, was an
Mhm.
entertainer, singer, right?
Yeah,
Um, um, oh, a great actor,
yeah.
great actor.
I'm only at a disadvantage because I don't know the movie Babe all that well, so
Babe
I
was
can't
the
quite
pig, the
remember.
pig, and
Oh, did
um,
you say Big
Babe. I said
or
Babe.
Babe? Yeah, I
With
wish I knew it.
um, uh, I'm gonna ask my girlfriend. Um, who is the star in the movie Babe?
It's like Phone a Friend on
Google,
Millionaire.
Google. Um, uh, uh, what was the famous line in the movie? How many pigs? What happened? How many limes a farmer? Who was in the movie? Oh boy, 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 boy. Movie facts. Babe movie facts. Let's
Where's
see here.
Wikipedia when you
I'm
need it?
taking a moment here just because James Cromwell, yes.
Oh, of
James
course, James
Cromwell.
Cromwell,
Yeah,
the,
James Cromwell.
otherwise known as Stretch Cunningham for many years on
Stretch Cunningham
On
is
the
a
Family.
hundred
Yeah, of
percent.
course.
What a great actor. Yeah, since you're bringing up some additional people that were in that show. What a great
Oh, of
show.
course. And then Vincent Gardenia, Betty Garrett, all those folks.
And he, oh, didn't I? Oh, I saw another one. Oh, yes, yeah. No, 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 that was another show. No, that was with Esther Roll, who
Oh, on
was
Good Times. Well, chances are you will see many crossover appearances by
right,
many of the actors. You know, on
right,
all the
right.
different Norman Lear sitcoms, you'll see
Well,
some folks on Mary Hartman, who appeared on All in the Family.
definitely, definitely, her husband, the Jeffersons guy.
Oh, Sherman Helmsley, and
Yeah, he came out to All in the Family, didn't he? Sometimes
oh, he was on. In
he was
fact, well,
almost a regular, right?
yeah, I mean, a 10-second story is that the fact that originally, when they introduced the Jeffersons into the show, they were so meticulous about the decision of who was going to play George Jefferson, they didn't even want to introduce the character before they had their right choice of actor. So there was the name escapes me, but they actually wrote in Louise's brother as,
Uh-huh.
pardon me, a precursor to George Jefferson. Because they said when George appears on All of the Family, it has to explode. We have to build this up, and that's exactly what they did. They didn't even introduce the George Jefferson character on camera until they had their perfect choice of actor. That shows you how serious they were about the show.
It's all good. I'm going to be putting this just so you know and the audience knows. So I have had the opportunity later on in Long Island at the Huntington Cinema Arts facility out there. They have a great facility, bringing great people to speak, and they did a All in the Family Norman Lear overall night. Okay,
Oh,
and Norman came out there some years ago, and I had the honor to interview him later on. This may be only as 10 years ago. And so I'm going to include, put this, our interview with that story. And then I'm going to add one more that I would have been so fortunate to use. And it's almost the number one or two or three broadcast of Good News broadcast on YouTube with, I don't know, maybe even almost I don't know, four or 500,000, 500,000 views. And it is Norman Lear created a special program in which Robin Williams is a flag, and it's his commentary as a flag, his comedy, his brilliance, his wonderfulness, because Norman was a pilot in the war, and this was a tribute to our service people and to the United States of America.
do you happen
It,
to remember? Was this a television special of sorts?
it was as well, I'm pretty sure.
Hmm.
It's a magnificent. You'd enjoy it, I
Was
feel.
this in Robin's early days?
I believe so, yeah. I mean, he wasn't
Oh,
Mork and Mindy in it, Mork, let's say, but he just was Robin Williams at his best.
that's fabulous. And leave it to Norman Lear to have found him, to have noticed him, recognized him, and pulled him in.
There you go. And Meathead seems to have done well, and Sally Struthers is, renowned, and what a great cast.
There,
Noah,
yes.
Yeah, good man. No, I'm going to ask you one last question.
I am
Okay.
only enhanced by you, Paul. This is fabulous. It's an honor to speak and have a conversation with someone who was part of the genuine article.
Well, I was a fortunate guy, and I've been fortunate since. I'm going to say because of those early days. My last question, because this is what I'm up to nowadays, is world peace, um, and the International Day of Peace, and supporting that with a concert in Times Square, and Earth Day, and well, September 21st, International Day of Peace. And I ask, Earth Day is April 22nd. That's the next show I'm up for and working on in Times Square. But peace, I wonder with you, Nora, Noah, excuse me, what's peace for you? What's peace for Noah Fleischman?
Peace for Noah Fleischman is something that comes from within. I don't think that it's something you can search for grandly. I don't think it's something that you can expect from others. It's something that, I mean, what did Edith Bunker teach us from all those years of watching All in the Family? She lived in a world that was literally populated by chaos on so many levels. And she wasn't afraid in many cases to point out to, it's kind of like the parables of Peanuts, Charles Schulz, the parables of All in the Family. What did Edith Bunker teach us about peace? Is that it comes from within, and you can actually have an effect on someone in your immediate realm when you can reach them, when you can speak to them, and if they are actually in conflict with your peace, you can at least make your point to them and let them know that perhaps they're out of line, and in fact, you can actually affect them in the way you speak. Edith was so well spoken. There were so many ways when she had to make her point, that like the Cousin Liz episode you were just talking about. There's one line that I never forgot when Archie was going on about how God wouldn't allow this and God wouldn't accept this. And she said, well, he's God, he's God, you're not, or something of that nature, meaning that,
That's exactly dead on what you're saying.
yeah, which means that you don't have the right to put forth what you believe is God's will. Only God does. And we're here to accept that. And that, to me, in so many ways, is what peace is about.
No, no,
And
you got the right name. You have the right name for the
well, I
way.
thank you so much.
Take care,
Noah in
my
the Bible bore a great burden, and believe me, I know what that's about.
friend.
Working in the industry that I do.
I think
Thank
I
you
know
so
what
much, Paul.
it is all about as well. All in a family. That's what it really is all about. See you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.